Well, hello everybody and welcome along to our analytics half hour. This afternoon I'm going to tackle multi-channel and multi-channel funnels in Google Analytics and how to find out what's happening. Now, I'm well aware this is not one of the easier subjects, so I'm going to take care to move relatively slowly and move through taking time to make sure everything's clear. Now, just before we get started, just to introduce myself, I'm Vernon Riley. I'm a chartered mechanical engineer, and I've spent my career working with systems and processes. So I apply engineering insights to ensure the management and reporting systems that go alongside analytics actually fit business objectives. Just a word about the interface in your browser. If you're watching this live, it's fairly simple. To the right of the screen slides I'm showing is a sidebar, and one of the tabs is a chat window. In that you can post messages and I can post messages back. Now I'll do my best to keep up with any messages, but as you'll understand, I can't necessarily read all the messages and concentrate on talking to everyone else at the same time. So if you've heard all of this, that's fine. You can type into the chat box, and with that, let's get going. So let's talk about this. Multiple channels. What do I mean? Well, I mean people who've come from a variety of places, right? People that have come from a variety of places, and they've come from those separate places perhaps a number of times before they do the thing that is of interest. So let's suppose you want them to buy a product, right? They have come from one place to your website, and then they've gone off and done something else. You know, it's been a weekend or whatever, and they've had some reason to come back. And it's after that second visit, or maybe after even a third or fourth visit, that they've actually bought the product. Now, it sounds fairly simple. It is a relatively common scenario, but actually understanding what's going on in analytics isn't that easy unless you can walk through it. So what I've done is I've put together a simple purchase scenario so I can explain from a business point of view what's happening. And then I've put the robot army that we've got to walk through the sequence of actions to cause Google Analytics to record the data for this scenario. So then we can review the reports together, and you'll see how Google Analytics produces reports that enable you to disentangle this multi-channel situation. Okay. So we're going to purchase a product. What happens? What do we set up? Well, we've said that the first visit for this visitor, they're going to land on a page, right? Now, ideally, I'd have called it landing page, but for whatever reason, I called it multi-source sim, right? And on that page, there's a link to landing page. So that they've come from a source, right? They've found their way to multi-source sim, and then they've gone on to landing page. And landing page, think of it like a sign-up page, right? It's got a form, right? And this is to simulate the sign-up that people often do on landing pages, where they fill in their details, perhaps including an email address, and then download a white paper, right? So you go from the landing page and you download a white paper. But at the point that you've filled in your details, you're added to a mailing list. Okay, so if you look at this, and you may want to expand it to big screen, you'll see that all of the pages, and there's a whole lot of people who've come to multi-source sim. Now, this is the behavior section of Google Analytics, and it's in site content, all pages, and I've got multi-source sim, and that's where they've landed, and that's where the entrances are. And if you flicked across to the navigation summary, you'd see more detail. And from multi-source sim, they make their way to landing page, right? From landing page, they wind up on downloads, and they download whatever it is they want. Okay, so they're happy. You're happy. You've got them on the mailing list, right? They've got the white paper that was the subject of the advert or the prompt that got them to come to your visit in the website in the first place. And having got that, they disappear. But you've got this email address, and you're probably going to send them a series of emails over time, Doesn't matter how long in principle, but, you know, a number of weeks or something like that, number of days. And the visitor is going to receive this sequence of emails, each of which has got a link inviting them to respond. Right? Now, you may do all sorts of things, but at some point, one of these is going to have a link that invites them to purchase. Right? So they've got this email, they've got a link in, and they come back to a page. I called it product1.php in the scenario, right? And that is the product purchase page. And without going through all the details of having a long, complex checkout, we'll assume they can just buy it on that page, bang, right? Fill it in, and then they go to a thank you page. And you would typically think, well, that's what the goal is going to be that I want to configure into Google Analytics. Yeah, absolutely right. Right. So that's it. But if you just look at it simplistically, right, and you look at the product one, right, and you say, where's my source for the people who come to the product page? It's email, right? And if you put the second dimension in, you see the source. But the point, this is the point, this is a bit of a fib. Right? We know from the scenario, what I've just explained, that wasn't where they initially came from, right? Yes, they came from your email list just. That's the place they'd last come from. But they initially came from a different location. In our case, they came direct, right? Now, we could have constructed the scenario differently. They might have come from somewhere else. They might have come from Google organic, they might have come from Google AdWords, you know, CPC, Facebook, wherever, but they came from somewhere different. So this report, it's a bit misleading because at any one time, a visitor has got a single source and medium combination. So the latest one overwrites the previous one, right? So the skeptic might say, oh, well, we've got to be concerned then with what Google... But actually what we need to ask ourselves is, can Google Analytics record and display the interactions between these two channels? We've got a first case, they came from direct, and we've got a second case, they came from email. So can Google Analytics actually show both of these scenarios, right? Well, the answer is it can, right? And in order to do that, you need to go to a report. Now, this may be a report you've never considered looking at, right? Now, it's called the Assisted Conversions Report. It's in the Conversion Multi-Channel Funnels section of Google Analytics. And it won't be, and you'll see nothing unless you've got goals configured and you've waited 2 or 3 days at a minimum since the activities actually happened, right? There's a time lag over which Google actually processes the information to get it into this form, to get it into this report. But at the top of the report, you'll see you can select the conversion that you want and whether it's all or AdWords and the window, the time window over which you want it to look. Right, and you'll see, as if by magic here, we've got the 2 channels, and I put a second dimension of the landing page, and the landing page that Google Analytics thinks they came to. So I have recovered, in this case, the direct source to display alongside the email. Now, if you've got a whole series of these things are happening in over time, you'd see multiple channels here. So Google hasn't lost it, right? Now, the sharp-eyed amongst you, it's 89 because I did some tests. I did an additional 10 tests before I ran the complete scenario. The actual number is 79, right? The people who purchased the product, right? Right. Well, that's okay, right? So if you've got goals configured, and you've got a sequence that you perhaps don't understand as well, and in general you won't have the luxury of saying I knew exactly how many people came to my website and where they came from. You're doing the detective work. You're going backwards. You're saying I've got a situation where a number of people come and buy a product, right, or come and register for something, and I want to find out where they first came from, where they last. I want to see how the sequence operated, what I did that caused them to get to the point they said, you know what, yes, I'm going to buy. Okay. Now, Google does also give us that ability, and it's in another area that you probably haven't looked at before. It's in the section called attribution, which is right down at the bottom in model comparison, right? So I'm going to flick there, and you'll see here I've again got the ability to select which conversion I'm interested in. So if you've got lots of goals set up, congratulations, right? You get the option to choose the model, right? Now, I'm not going to talk through lots of models today because that would be just silly. I don't want to overload you with information. I want to give you a situation where you can ask questions and you can get comfortable with this first. So I've picked what was the first interaction, right? And here, so you can see in that red box, the first interaction. So I want Google to tell me what was the first interaction this user had with my site. And in that case, what was the channel that they came from, right? And you can see I've labeled it with a big arrow because the conversions against the first interaction, 89 for direct. So that's where they came from. Okay. So that might be the most significant interaction. It might be that what you're most interested in is, where do I get new prospects from? Yeah, sure. I'll do all sorts of things afterwards in terms of persuading and talking to them and building a relationship in order that they get to a point that I actually, that they actually want to purchase, right? But you want to know where they initially came from. So that might be the focus of your attention. But if that isn't the focus of your attention, right, you perhaps pick a different model. And you'll see here I've picked the last interaction model, right? And here's where you see I did some tests. The last interaction for the 79 who came from email. Now, that answers what was the thing that pushed them over the line? So if you've got multiple channels, right, that are working together to produce a situation where eventually somebody purchases, I mean, perhaps eventually gives in, right? Or more positively, becomes clear that this is the right answer for them and that they should proceed, right? Google Analytics does have the capability, right, to set it up and to show you the interactions that were involved. So what have I done this afternoon? Well, I've created a simple scenario, right? Land from a direct channel, sign up, then disappear, get an email with a link, come back, purchase, and have a goal, right, of the page that you get to following the purchase, right? Right. And it's having got that goal in place that the reports at the bottom of the left-hand side that we've been talking about this afternoon, the assisted conversions and the model comparison work, right? So you'll recall that we can see where they first came from and you can see what pushed them over the line. Often it is email, right? So in the general case, in the case that you're more likely to be looking at, or I'm more likely to be looking at when I'm looking at a client where I don't know the scenario and I'm doing the detective work, my first step is to make sure I've got goals set up. Because if I've got goals set up, then these reports start to work, right? The next important thing, try and make sure that I've got the channels that are of interest to me, that I know I'm putting marketing information out into, tagged, so I can actually see them. They're not, as here, in a direct bucket. They're not getting lost into an aggregate that I can't unpick, because I want to know which marketing method actually worked. So what I'm hoping is that in this short webinar, right, because we're nearly at an end now, right, I've been able to show you Google Analytics can enable you to disentangle everything that's going on. You can see the patterns of user behavior as they react and experience your marketing as you build the relationship with them. Now, you may have all sorts of questions about this, right? This is, as I say, not one of the simpler areas, right? I'm happy to have an offline conversation with you afterwards or at some future time about this. Equally, if you want to put questions into the chat box, we can try and deal with some questions now, right? So if that makes sense, I'm glad, right? If there's anything you don't understand, please ask, right? Now, I do these on a regular basis, right? Just whilst I'm looking, and I'd like to know how to make them better for you, right? So I'm going to post you a link, right? And I would like you, if you can spare a couple of minutes, a couple of very simple questions, just go to the feedback form, right? That should be appearing in your browser, right? And give me some feedback on what we could do better, what you'd like to see, what would make a difference for you, right? So if you want to talk further about this, about other questions, other challenges that you have, anything that didn't make sense, that's fine, right? My contact details are email, vernon.riley@kksmarts.com, right? There's a blog, right, where past webinars on analytics have been posted. There's the website, www.kksmarts.com, and my LinkedIn profile, right? I hope you found that useful, right? And it will help you disentangle what can be relatively complex patterns of interaction between visitors and marketing. So with that all said, don't seem to have any questions at the moment. So it's Vernon Riley saying thank you for coming along this afternoon. I'll hope to welcome you to another webinar in short order. Bye for now. Bye-bye.